Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome. We are so glad you're here. We're going to get started in just a moment. So glad to have you. Nice to see so many of our wonderful familiar faces. Hi, hi. And go ahead and drop in the chat. Where are you coming in from and what are you currently working on? What kind of book are you writing? What kind of essays are you putting out in the world? What kind of short stories are you loving? Just let us know what is going on in your writing life and where are you coming in from? And Yvonne, congratulations as well. I saw on social media you just got granted kind of an important fellowship. Yvonne, you want to quickly unmute yourself and tell us that cool thing that you won?
Well, yeah, well, thank you so much. Somehow I was selected to Penn America Emerging Writers Workshop in LA. And we just had orientation today. And I'm kind of nervous, but there will be an Eventbrite event for the reading. So I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Yvonne. You're doing amazing work out there. It is so glad to see you out there.
Thank you.
Terrific. And Kathy, you're in Santa Fe. I'm going to be in Santa Fe in March. That is so cool. We will have to try and cross paths in there. I'm going to be teaching for Madeline Island School of the Arts in downtown Santa Fe, a class called Your Path to Publication. That's all about authors, finding agents and publishers and prepping for the query process and all that cool stuff. Oh, wow. Sue is in Eureka,
This
California.
writing
Fantastic.
webinar. Can I call you back? I would like to finish this.
Awesome. Always have exciting moments there.
Wow.
Welcome, everybody. We are about to dive into the Writer's Bridge in just a moment. If you are just joining us, please do drop into the chat. Where are you coming in from? What are you working on, or what is currently going on in your writing life? And I'm going to go ahead and hit the mute all button. So if you are Sharla or Kerry, you're going to need to unmute yourself again. And we will that way be safe from barking dogs and intrusive children and all the wonderful reasons why I myself am kind of a hermit.
Allison, could you make me a co-host so I can help you with the admin?
100%.
Thanks.
Welcome, everybody. So glad you are here. And let me go ahead and pin our Kerry as well. Welcome to the Writer's Bridge. If you're just joining us, please do go ahead and drop where you're coming in from into the chat, and also let us know, what are you currently working on? We love making connections. There's been some great friendships made here at the Writer's Bridge, and we are so glad that you are able to join us today. Gotta say, we are going to talk public speaking today. And for me, public speaking has been my number one way to build my mailing list, to sell books, to support my career. I've done webinars, panels, conferences, workshops, podcasts. They have all built my audience. And today we are going to talk to Kerry Cathers about how you can begin, build, or level up your own public speaking. But before we dive in, hey, Sharla, what's coming up in the wonderful world of craft talks?
Thanks, Allison. Speaking of public speaking, I fell into it doing craft talks during the pandemic. So I'm still learning, so I'm really excited about this. So we have on Craft Talks the Little Things Exploring Sensory Detail Bring Characters to Life. That's December 4th. So that's not tomorrow. We're gonna join next week, which means it's on early bird price right now at $15 until the end of tomorrow. So if you're interested, I'll pop that link into the chat. But it's with Jessica Handler. It's learn how sensory details make characters and setting come to life. How to make memorable, realistic characters is for all genres, fiction and nonfiction narrative. And then we have a special course with Allison that's coming Wednesday. The following Wednesday was that December the 4th, I think, 11th.
I think it's the 11th. I feel like it's the 11th. The end of the year is crashing upon us.
Yes, it's coming. It's going to be great. It's at 1 p.m. instead of our 3 p.m. because Allison is on, she needs to sleep. But it's Great Beginnings, Capturing Readers, Agents, and Publishers from Word One. Allison, do you want to talk a little bit about that one? Because it's different than we usually do.
It is. So I am super excited about it because I'm going to teach for about 30 minutes. Then we're going to take about 20 minutes and work on our own first pages. You're going to email them to me really fast. And then I'm going to actually discuss people's first pages and do some of that live editing that I really love doing and talk about what is making our first pages amazing, amazing. So I hope some of you will join me for that December the 11th. I also have a couple things coming up that I will tell you about. One is Dinty W. Moore and I are hosting a 4-day virtual memoir intensive. That's going to be January 18th through 21st. That's Martin Luther King Day weekend. And that's an opportunity to just kind of jumpstart your writing year. It's called Memoir, Large and Small. I'll drop the link into the chat. And Dinty will also be our guest next month on the Writer's Bridge. We're going to talk about writing in a changing world, what it's like to publish right now, what it's like to write right now. How do we react to the world around us? I'm dropping one more link in the chat as well. I'm also doing a thing called Project Memoir. That's an 8-week course starting in January. 99% of the stuff that I do, that Craft Talks does, that all of us do, it's first come, first serve. Project Memoir is the only application-based thing I do, and applications are due December 15th. It's hella expensive and a whole lot of work, but you can check it out and see if it is your kind of thing. So let us dive into today. So speaking opportunities are on the rise for authors, both fiction and nonfiction, and public speaking is, like Sharla and I have learned, like Kerry here has learned, one of the most popular ways to connect with and grow your audience. Speaking can also sell books, establish your expertise, and yeah, you can even make money. But one of the big things that we see out there is that sometimes authors take what should be a networking opportunity and they turn it into a marketing opportunity. And every single one of us has sat through that hideous webinar where there was 15 minutes of content and 45 minutes of now buy my thing. Sharla, who is our amazing guest today?
Thanks, Allison. Our special guest is Kerry Cathers, who has been leading seminars since her baptism of fire at the 1996 International Medieval Congress in Leeds, England. Since then, she has presented at conferences in Europe and North America at the Royal Ontario Museum, Brock University, Centennial College. More recently, she runs a Curiosity of Crime, a research resource for authors of historical detective fiction, giving talks on early forensics and poisons for Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and RWA Kiss of Death Coffin series. She was the speaker at the Historical Novel Society North America Conference in 2023. Welcome, Kerry. Your experience sounds fascinating to me. What got you started in public speaking?
What got me started was I was a doctoral student in England, and it was just what was expected. You know, you didn't go through the program without throwing yourself in front of a crowd and talking about the work that you were doing. And then when that fell through, I just thought, you know, I kind of enjoy this. There's a market. So I stumbled into speaking and public speaking. And then when I pivoted from a freelance career with writing, with businesses and editing, into a Curiosity of Crime, it was natural, because it's, you know, just writing books and things and such is not enough. So it was tumbled into it, well, pushed into it, and then just kind of fell into the next stages. So yeah.
That's amazing. So Kerry, what makes public speaking an effective part of your quote unquote platform? Is your purpose, do you want to make money? Do you want to raise awareness? Do you want to sell books? Something else? What's your goal? Why are you doing it?
And I think it's all of those, because eventually, you know, we're doing things because, you know, we want to make money. But I think one of the strategies you have to look at is it's one of the steps toward making the money. So right now, what I'm doing and why I'm talking a lot with the various groups is because I'm nonfiction. This is a great way to, one, show that I know what I'm talking about. And it's a quick way of doing that. Two, it's a way to get people accustomed to me and what my writing style will be like. And three, it's to make connections. Because, you know, it's one thing when you're picking up just a book and it's a name that, you know, you're looking at and thinking, and the person's far, far away. But when you start connecting with people, then, you know, then you've got what we refer to in authors in the writing as a street team. So it's a wonderful way to spread, you know, get word of mouth and to build a street team. So it can be, and, you know, even as you say, like it can be integral, because I think people now, since COVID, want connection.
Right.
And this is a great way.
What mistakes do you see authors make in public speaking?
Yeah, and I think this is that there are a few, and I've made notes because I tend to ramble. is that they don't deliver on their promise. So whatever you, and it's like when you're writing the back cover of your book, if it's a slasher book, you gotta, indicate to it so people know when they pick it up that it's going to be this. So I think it's knowing the difference between a seminar, a discussion, a workshop, and a Q&A, and letting people know that so they don't show up and think, this is not what I was expecting. They make it about themselves, which Allison, you've already talked about. I went to a couple of talks at the Historical Novel Society where they were like, we're going to talk about this subject, but I'm going to focus on my book and tell you how I used it in my book. And it's like, no. They also lose control. When you're there, I think some people have this idea that if the discussion's going or if something's happening or I can't allow questions, that will be rude. And it's no, people appreciate order within a seminar, even within a discussion, that at some point you got to say, okay, folks, that's great, but we're off topic. Let's come back. And that also shows a professionalism. And I think the other one is that they read. And I'm looking at this to kind of give you an auto, because I've had people come in and they just do talking like, no. So it's, don't read, and don't do introductions. Even if unless you have a fewer people. Yeah.
Kerry, I'd like to take a moment and make all of our lives hell. Hi, everybody. Today, I'm going to be reading from this thing. And what happens in this scene is that the girl starts talking to her mother, and then she and the mother are going to have a fight. And that's what I'm going to, no, do not do this. Do not ever do this. Whether it is a reading or a webinar or a speech, your work has got to stand for itself. Rather than talking about what you're going to talk about, go into the beginning of what you're actually talking about. Kerry, I want to ask you, how do you set up the beginning of your speeches? So for example, for me, anybody here who's been to a webinar with me, you know that at the very beginning, there is a slide with a picture of an Icelandic geyser. And I explain that I'm going to tell you an awful lot more than you have time to process, but you're going to get the slides and you should ask questions in the chat. And this is how long we're going to go for. So I really try to lay it out. This is what we're here to do. Kerry, how do you begin your very best speeches?
Exactly the same way. And that is actually the perfect way to do it, because what you want to do is you want to set the scene. And this is also what I did writing and looking into doing PowerPoints, and the brain processes information in certain ways. And having an agenda page, and here's what we're going to talk about in the order, and laying it out at the beginning, that prepares people. They know what they're talking about. They know where it's going to be. That is, if you do nothing else when you're presenting it, slideshow, it begins where it says what we're talking about, and then an agenda. That is absolutely the best way to go into it.
You are promising them chainsaws, and they are going to get chainsaws. There will be slashing. And then the people who are not up for slashers, right, they know to put the book back on the shelf or to leave the room.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And adult learners love knowing what's on the agenda, especially if you're doing anything that's educational. Yeah. How do you know what to talk about? Let's say you have go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also one of those things that and why people read, you can read more pages when you're reading hard copy than you can read when it's electronic, because there's something about the brain that needs to mark its progress. So when you have up topic A, topic B, topic C, when the brain gets to topic C, they're like, okay, topic C, we're only going to, E or D. So it's a way of keeping the brain engaged. Yeah.
Right. So how do you know what to talk about? Should you talk about your book? Should you talk about your life? What's compelling for people if you've been invited as an author, let's say?
I think with something like this is that, once you've got your topic down, and I will say one of the things to do, and one of the things that helps is when people come in, just have a bit of chit chat. And that's when you talk, that's when the small talk hits. But with the talk, it's kind of, I sit back and I think, what are people looking for? What are authors looking for? What will be useful? What will they find? What will solve a problem for them or answer a question? And I think the key here is, when you get it down, it's going to change. So the very first forensics talk I gave is similar to, but quite different from the ones I'm doing now, because with questions coming in and with interacting with authors, it's like, they don't need this, they actually need this. So it's something that you refine it, but it's starting with that question of what can I offer? What have I learned that I can, and what is my specialty that I can offer other people? And I think if you have a book, I think you can quickly make mention to it, but if it's relevant to your talk, like if you're doing how to build suspense, and oh, by the way, here's my book, buy my book. I would say rather to do that at the end is have a slide with a couple of covers on it and your website, because it's at the end. If you're going to catch them and sell anything, it's going to be at the end, not at the beginning. So I would say just have a slide up so that they know.
I agree. And those of you who are here, Sharla and I have some more questions, but please do add your questions in the chat as well. We will mark them with a little question mark to make sure we don't miss them. Kerry, when you are speaking, how do you find speaking opportunities? So, for example, are we looking for events around our topic, events around our audience, or writing events? Like, for example, if I'm writing a memoir about nursing, am I looking for the academic Nursing Through History, Florence to Now conference? Or am I looking for the annual convention of international nurses? Or am I looking for Nonfiction Now to talk about writing memoir? What's most effective? Our topic, the book itself, or writing events, or the audience?
Yeah. I think if you're doing nonfiction, it very much is look for what's relevant, look for the people who are there might be interested in it. But I would also say, and I'm going to be so Canadian right now, so I sort of semi-apologize. There was a quote by Wayne Gretzky, and I use it, and I think it's great, is that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I think, again, like if it's a nursing memoir, hey, there's a conference coming up for nurses. You know what? I've got a call for papers. Let me submit. Because the more you get out that you never know. I remember, and I was thinking that, and there was with the Editors Association, and I made a proposal and I packed it away and thought, there's no way, they're not even going to be interested. Boom. But I tried. And then 3 weeks later, they said, hey, we'd love to have this topic. So I think the key here is don't say no for them. Let them say no, because you never know what they're looking for. They might be looking through it and go, oh my goodness, there's a breath of fresh air. Talking about being a memoir. Okay, yeah, that. So, if it's about memoirs, if it's about nurses, whatever it's about, throw it out there. And I would say, if you're going for fiction writers, if you're going to a conference, find out whether or not you can be part of a panel. Like every opportunity, if you're going there anywhere, take the opportunity to speak. That's wonderful. I would say start small, because when you're looking at Olympic runners, when they're in that gold medal race, that's not their first race. Mm-hmm. So, start with opportunities with writing groups, with your local library, with, speaking at a bookstore. So where you can get comfortable speaking without really doing too much damage to things. And panels are great because you're up and you're getting accustomed to speaking, but you're not the only one up there.
Yeah. Which I think actually this ties into Bonnie's question in the chat. Bonnie asks, I'm on a panel with 2 other writers in about 10 days. Their books are out. My book is not out for 10 more weeks. How do I make sure I contribute when I know nobody will have read my book yet?
Who cares? If it's there, because this is a wonderful way of saying, you know what? Okay, guys, it's coming out 10 weeks, but here's what it is. Here's what's doing. Just talk about it as though it's there and people have read it, and just go in. And I think the key here with this is you're like, if you're seeing the kind of going, oh, I'm really sorry that the book isn't out, and I'll talk a little bit about it. And it's like, hey, my book's coming out soon. It's not here physical copies for you, but let's talk. Throw your enthusiasm into it. And if you have a comment or something you can add to it, because you're finished, you're at the publishing stage, it's coming out. Mm-hmm. You have knowledge, even if it's not hit the bookshelf, you've got as much knowledge as others.
And I venture to guess that people haven't read the other books. Like the majority of people have not read the other books either. Like
90% of the people in the room haven't read any of the books.
Right. So I think,
and when I gave my first
Tanya
talk, the historical novels,
Tanya
I had like about 30 people in the audience. Nobody read my book.
Right.
Yeah, because part of the point of speaking is get them interested in finding out more
Right.
about your book. Tanya mentions in the chat, mention the pre-order at the end. Hey,
Yeah.
Sharla, what's our next question?
Well, I was going to ask so you take advantage of the opportunity, shoot your well, I guess the puck for Wayne Dressy, right? But if you have a speaking engagement, what kind of materials do you think you need to, should people be prepared to send to those opportunities? Are there applications? Do you need a PowerPoint? Do you need a speaker packet? Do you need to have like a recording of yourself talking? Like, what are they looking for?
I think with this, and this is going to sound like I'm kind of passing the buck, but if there's a call for papers or if there's a conference, they'll tell you exactly what they want. And I will say, if they ask for pink paper with really kind of, flowery lettering, you send it on pink paper and flowery lettering. You give them exactly what they ask for and you give them nothing more. Now, in terms of sending other things, I would say if this is something that you're going to do and you want to look toward it, is on your website, set up a speaker page. And I'm going to, I am computer inept, so I'm going to put in, there is an individual whose name is Jared Dees, and I'm going to put his,
You're going to pop his name in the chat, and we're going to take a look because he's got a good speaker page.
And it's, so it's jareddees.com, and he's got like an author speaking page. And it's wonderful because he just takes you point by point by point of what you need to do. And why it's so valuable is because it's organically built. He hasn't gone on theory. This is what he did. And what he also has said is he credits his speaker page as what has built his speaking career. Because once you get it on, then when they're looking at you, that's the way you show I'm a professional and I know what I'm doing. So have pictures, have a bio on it. And you should have about a 1-minute clip. But people are saying, well, wait a minute, I've never presented. How do I get the 1-minute clip? Even if it's just, you put something in saying, listen to me talk, you pick a topic related to your specialty and you record yourself on your computer and you put that up. And that's all that they need, because all they want to see is that you're not someone who talks like this, or you're not someone who talks like this. They just want to see what your personality is and whether or not you've got a presence. But his is great. Like, I don't look at mine because mine is still under construction. His is great. But I would also say, especially for readers or for writers, is look at Jane Friedman. She's got a what to expect. And so once you get further, that's kind of when you're getting paid and when they're sending you out, but that's kind of the next step. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but just something that's clean and professional and that says, hey, because that's what they're taking a chance on you. Show that you're professional.
Right. We have a question. Go ahead, Allison.
And I think too, it's important to know as well that being able to roll with it is also an incredibly valuable skill. So like, for example, Kerry right now is at a relative's assisted living facility, having an experience that she did not plan to have today. And yet she is still here doing her best with what is not necessarily her normal speaking setup. She's fun. She's interesting. We're loving listening to her quality information. And so do know it's not always about the absolute slickest package. It's also about your personality and the actual information you have to share. We actually had somebody who is interested in being on the Writer's Bridge in the future. I had a really great chat with them. Their information is lovely. And I said, but first, you've got to take a couple of months and work on your vocal fry, because there is a way of speaking that's common in a younger generation right now. You've probably heard it. It's where there's kind of an sound in people's voices. And for those of us who are not of that generation, it's like listening to trap music. It's really weird and off-putting. And so it can be really worth it to prepare yourself ready for whatever opportunities that you can get. Sharla points out it's the Kardashian effect. For me, starting as a speaker, I started out by applying to writing conferences when they put up, hey, we are calling for applications. And at the beginning, when you're first starting speaking, you're probably not going to get paid. The first book I published in this genre was how to get published in literary magazines because I needed a $10 book that I could sell at the bookstore table to compensate for the fact that I was paying for my own plane ticket and my own hotel to get to the conference. So start thinking about how can you, even if you have not yet published a book, what can you bring to the table that is a small sellable item? Maybe it's you're doing one-on-one Zoom consultations on your particular topic, but you may also have to just invest some time and some energy into getting yourself out there so that you can get clips of you speaking, references, quotes. Sharla, what's our next question?
I have a question from Jacqueline in the chat. Jacqueline says, I've been on a few panels and webinars and haven't had time or money to put clips on my website. Is there another way to promote myself, or should I just spend the money on revamping my site so someone has an easy place to see the clips? What do you suggest?
Carrie?
I think it's looking at, your return on your investment. Because I wouldn't say go out and spend $2,000 or something. And I do think that you can get recordings, like even if it's just something that's not in front of people, because what they're not going to be looking at what audience you have. They're going to be looking at your delivery. They're going to be looking at your appearance. They're going to be looking at how you present the information. So I think when you begin, that you can start small and then get into something that's bigger. I'm just trying to think, like even with YouTube, like when the speaker page on my website is actually approved, I'm going, to throw in, the YouTube. But I think it's start with what you've got, because it was something that I realized afterwards is everybody who's in the industry realizes every single person who's successful in speaking began with nothing.
Right.
And as long as you're kind of like, you know what, I don't really have anything, but I'm professional, trust me, then that helps. Because again, like if it's going to be 3-4 years before you get a speaking gig, there's no sense putting thousands of dollars into it. Yeah.
Well, how do you transition from classes to panels and libraries to paid speaking? Elizabeth asked this question.
I think with a lot of them, it's not really a transition. It's just kind of a different setting. So it's how am I presenting the information? Like when I'm coming here, it's a discussion. I'm not going to have, a PowerPoint where you're going to be, I would say start with the smaller. And then as you get big, you will be found word of mouth. I am next week getting probably what is one of the biggest opportunities to get my name out there. And I'm just like terrified at the potential of messing this up. But I got that gig because they attended a Sisters in Crime where I was talking. So this is, again, like if you keep going out, you're going to get hit. So it's not, I don't necessarily think it's a conscious movement. It's like what they call like the tipping point. Like you do so many things and then you hit something and it takes off, or it takes off rather than going down. So I would say like transitioning is just, the principles are the same, with the public speaking, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, and just keep hitting them and the other opportunities will come. Because I can tell you this, if I thought I'm going to consciously transition to this and I'm going to reach out and contact this individual who's huge in the mystery world and the crime world, he's going to he's going to ask me to be on his speaking thing. I thought, no, let's just build my reputation, build my voice, build my skill. And then, and I think if I had applied to him and approached him, probably had the opportunity.
And so I also want to say, though, that when you're saying about build your skill, Elizabeth, who asked this original question, for me, I was able to transition from showing up for myself, buying my own plane ticket, by making sure that I made a point of meeting all of the people who are 1 or 2 levels up from me whenever I go to an event. So I'm not necessarily like, hey, don't you want to have me on your panel next time? But, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Oh, I'm so excited by your speech. I'll be teaching this over in room 3 at 2:00. I really got a big boost from meeting Jane Friedman. And I met Jane Friedman because I saw her speak at Hippocamp, and she and I like casually talked, and she said, oh, you should write something for my blog. And then I spent 2 years paralyzed in fear that I had nothing good enough to send her. And then I saw on her Instagram that she was coming to Dubai, where I live, to speak on a conference here. And I messaged her through Instagram and I said, hey, I would love to drive you around town and show you the stuff around here. We had a really nice lunch. I was not expecting anything.
Allison, you are muted. I think you became unplugged in your enthusiasm.
In my enthusiasm, I accidentally tapped the side of my microphone and it muted me. Thank you. So I didn't do it because I wanted to consciously invest that time and let me get something from someone, but it was just putting myself out there. And it gave Jane an opportunity to see, hey, I'm a decent human being who's going to do okay things. And then that helped me do a trial webinar with her, which led to a whole lot more webinars. So it is that tipping point, like Kerry said, where by consistently showing up and delivering the best you can, you will start rising. Jessica has a question too. The process of applying to conferences is quite time consuming. Do you have tips for efficiency with how we can find these opportunities?
I think it's a lot like, and I know it's saying I'm going to sound horrible with this. And I would consider it like finding an agent or finding a publisher. You know, it's you've got to go out and you've got to, find them. And I will say that okay, again, technologically an idiot. I'm still trying to get through the Gutenberg press to figure out how that works. And every time I go in, there's a different list of conferences. But I think if we start and talking to people, like if you are in a place where there are other writers, talk to them. And that's, I'm starting to build up a list of places to contact and to look into by listening to panels and finding out where conferences and talking to people in my writing community. And when they say, oh, there's this conference, oh, okay, boom, write it down. And I think that's a good way of doing it, because then you can just say, is it worth going to? Because there were a couple that I was saying, I'm looking into this. And I had one of the women in my writing group go, oh, yeah, okay, you know what? All right. But when I went at this time, it was disorganized. I wasn't in. So you get kind of feedback that way as well. But I think, unfortunately, it's a long progress, because I started with the Sisters in Crime by just putting up the chapters list and just kind of, taking one and going 1, 2, 3, 4, taking 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just contacting people. But it does get easier because and I don't know how, and I think it's magic or something. You don't realize how much the community is talking. Mm-hmm. And if you go in and you do something that's good, like it's fairly easy for me, I think, with Sisters in Crime, because there's been enough chatter about me and enough up there and on it. So it starts out difficult, but then when there's the talk, then, you get known and it's easier to get into places. And I will admit it, and I'm sorry, I can't give you like the magic way to get in, but it's a slog. But I would say that when you're applying, put into the application, not just, I'm going to talk about blah, 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 blah. Answer the question. That's for networking and for people who are freelancers. It's the WIIFM. What's in it for me? So every time you apply, here's what I'm going to talk about. Here's why it's of use to your attendees. Here's why your members will find it of use. Here's the issue it's going to address. So don't just say, I'm going to talk about this. It'll be like, I'm going to talk about the pictures of doors or paintings of doors. Ever thought about making a doorway, ominous or happy? Here's how so present it as here's the situation, here's how I'm going to solve it, rather than just I'm going to talk about. And once you do that, they see value in it, because when you go and talk, you're not just impacting your reputation, you're impacting the reputation of the people who are hosting it. So if they're looking at it and going, this person's going to provide value to my attendees, they're more likely to pick you than someone who's not telling what how they'll help or what value they are. So what problem are you going to solve? What question are you going to answer?
That's wonderful. How long do you how long do you talk about yourself? Like, what is, if you're talking about what you wrote, how long should you read from your book? Do you have any suggestions on time? Oh, if it's like for a reading rather than like a presentation? Well, the question is, I'll just read you the question from Dorothy. How long do you speak? 1 chapter or more? So I think maybe she's thinking readings. Is that correct, Dorothy? Reading?
I would think, because one of the things with that, it's, and this is again with networking, and it's one of the things that I learned when I started freelancing, is that the reason commercials are 30 seconds is because people start fading off at 30 seconds. And I remember going to one reading and the fellow read for close to 10 minutes. And everybody's just like, oh, please, 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 please. So think of it this, I would say, if you're hitting the 5-minute mark, you're going too far. And I would think if it's going to like a reading, is rather than, one long slog, is like, I'm going to read you, pick out like things that you think are going to capture their attention or that are going to capture their interest. So hit with your best. And then talk about it a little bit. And then say, are the questions, or what do you think? And then, okay, you know what, I'm moving on to this. So have, rather than one big thing and then a discussion, it's just little pieces. Because then again, you're catching also their attention, but you get to bring more of it in. But if you hit 5 minutes, you've lost them. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that the brain stops paying attention every 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's always a good moment to either change tone or change direction or remind someone of something or to tell a joke. Like every 5 minutes, your audience is wavering somewhere else.
Yeah, the comic version of this is, for every second that your audience is laughing, they will be staying with you for that long of not laughing. And it's true for like deeply serious material as well. For every second that they're going, oh, you have that many seconds to let them lean back a little before you start to lose them again. Katharina points out, after 4 minutes, you need a change of pace or what you do or how you move. Jan points out, alternate talking and reading. And for a single author, 45 minutes total is the absolute max. 30 is better. And as we used to say in the circus, always leave them wanting more. Always leave them wanting more. This is what kills many of our relationships. We stop wanting more. It is also true for sharing your book, your writing, your work with the world.
Yeah.
Kerry,
and it's like, you want to give them that taste so that, again, that they come back in. Because if you give them everything they want and they're like, well, that's everything, I don't need anything more. Then, because it's one thing to get people into your talk and sitting down. That's, that will grow. Don't worry too much about that. Focus on keeping them there. So that when you talk again, they're like, oh my goodness, I really enjoyed that. I'm going to that one. That's what so think about, what am I going to do to keep them coming back?
Give them a sampler. Don't give them a meal.
And that's also if you want to, like when you're starting out or when you start, because I would say also, if you want, and especially if you're doing nonfiction, your end goal should be to put all of your talks on your website and have like what they call like a taste of whatever. Put like out, so that could be your speaker page, is you could have it double duty, is that here's a little thing about a talk I'm giving for free. You can see about this. People can use that as your sample, but they can, for booking you, but they can also use that as the sample of, do I want to pay for this person's, program? So yeah. And people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to give away all my secrets. They won't buy it. No. Yeah. If you're doing it then yeah.
Right. Do you work with a speaking agent? And if how do you get one?
I don't know whether or not I probably would, because again, like, we've all said, like when you're starting, and Allison was saying that she started with things that weren't paid. So, if you're paying someone to get you a gig that you're not paying for, and I think it would be more damaging at the beginning, because even with this, like I've been speaking for 20 some years, and I've gotten a friend who saw my first forensics talk, and then she saw just the previous one I did, and we were sitting down for like, drinks and a chat and a friendly thing. And she goes, don't take this the wrong way, but the last talk you did was a lot better than the first one you did. And I was like, was it really that bad? And she's like, no. It's just you're comfortable with the material and you're comfortable talking about the material. So if you get this speaker person and you're not, and even Allison was saying, like, there's things you have to work on to make yourself better. If you're like, I want to be a runner, and they're like, hey, great, I've got you in lane number 4 of the Olympic gold medal. So you want to have that
totally
time.
Outclassed. You need the little neighborhood races. You need to do the turkey trot first. And then you're going to be able to level up. And
then
I
you-
have to
yeah.
say too, we had a great question in the chat about should you have someone come with you and record you so that you've got clips? Absolutely. That is a great idea. That can be really, really helpful, not just to advertise yourself, but also to make yourself better. Things that I have specifically had to work on for myself. Standing still in one place while I deliver things, because if you're moving around, you're upstaging yourself. Fortunately, I learned that in theater class. I started with a degree in theater. I deliberately removed ums from my speaking about 6 or 7 years ago. I'm going to say it took 6 months to get it started, and it took a year and a half of relatively constant practice of being conscious when I say and allowing myself to take that moment to pause instead of filling it with an Then I developed this weird mouth click where I went between saying things. Then I had to remove the mouth click because the mouth click was standing in for the I will also say the other key things that I've learned: allow more time than you think for people to ask a question, because it takes a moment for them to absorb it's time to ask a question now. It takes a moment for them to remember, what's that question I wanted to ask that I thought of 7 minutes ago and now I've forgotten it. And you've got to allow yourself to calmly and confidently look at the room and resist the urge to fill the silence. And that also brings me to my number one favorite thing is think about your own metaphor for the room. Are you the professor who knows more than everybody else and you can't wait to share your favorite topic? Are you the friend who has advice that nobody else is going to be honest enough to tell you? For me, my favorite metaphor for speaking, and this was also my metaphor for when I was a street performer, is that you have come to a party at the house of the coolest girl in school, except when you get there, you've discovered that she's actually even dorkier than you are. And for me, that is like my favorite thing. I'm imagining that all the people in the room, they're at a party in my house and we're all getting to be vulnerable together because we're all kind of in the same place.
Yeah. And that's brilliant. And that's one of the things that I will say for me, because I'm an introvert. And, when I began, when people say, let's go into a party, there's going to be like 40 people you don't know. And I'd be like, hey, no, let's go get my teeth pulled. That's much funner. So when you say, like when Allison was saying, is like, if you're a bit uncertain, build the persona. And when I go out to speak, it's the persona. And it just gives you a bit of extra, this is who I am. Well, I'm talking to these people. And when you're saying to get better, practice what you're talking about. And when you're rehearsing it, say it slower and get in the habit of speaking slower, because when you're in front of the people and the adrenaline starts rushing, it will bring you up to a normal pace. I over enunciate, and some people have commented on that because my normal way of speaking is like this. I get a lot of people saying, Kerry, you got to slow down. I'm not understanding. So I've got to practice really enunciating. So because what happens is when you speak slowly, when you're talking and you're thinking, I'm going on stage, speak slowly, your adrenaline's going to kick it up and your adrenaline's going to make it normal pace rather than crazy woman pace like I usually talk in. So, yeah.
I'm a fast talker too. What I hear from both you and Allison and from a lot of these experienced people in the chat is practice is important. And so in practicing, is it important to practice with recording yourself? Is it important to practice in a mirror? Would you suggest practicing by reading a script? I mean, what's the best way to prepare?
I would think when you're first, what I do is I build the PowerPoint because then I know what I'm talking about when, and then I walk through it without a script so I can see what's hitting, and then I write that. And when you're first starting out, you want and even when I'm doing a topic for the first time, I make cue cards. So I would say rather than having a piece of paper, it's the cue cards. But yeah, I do it. I will practice it because I think when I walk, and I will talk it through when I walk. But when you're starting out, it's great to get prepared in what you're wearing, practice your pose. And Allison is saying, like, see what your little quirks are, in terms of movement, but watch yourself. And I think it's just like a dancer. They improve by watching themselves. So if you're when you've got where you're comfortable with what you're going to say, then start working on, okay, what do I look like? What am I doing that's distracting? What do I have to change? And evaluate yourself and the movements and such. Yeah.
The first time I ever taught a webinar for Jane, and the first several webinars that I taught Jane, Creative Nonfiction, a couple of other places, I ran the entire webinar live with all of my slides with a friend listening on the other end to make sure I understood my script and I knew what was happening. After 5 years or 6 years or 7 years now, I'm able to use my slides as my own notes, but I used to write a full script for the entire webinar or for the entire live presentation until I got comfortable with the material and I knew what I wanted to say and the amount of time that I had to fill.
I'm the same way. Yeah. I start with a really full script, and then I practice that. And then I try to do a little bit of the version of do it without the script and see what I remember, what the hit points are in my memory, and then see if I can fill it in and not use my script as much. But yeah, I definitely am a write it all the way out sort of person. And I'm still practicing with the y'all. I'm still working on not saying every time I see a craft talk replay video that I'm editing, I'm like, oh, another dang it. But it takes a lot of practice for sure.
It really does. So let's loop around because we always try to be upfront about privilege and about money here at the Writers Bridge. Kerry, how do you find out if they're going to pay you? How do they find out if they're going to provide lodging or food or travel? How do we ask that question?
I think what is like a lot of them will indicate it at the beginning. Like, some of them will come up front. This is what they're doing. On ones when they start showing interest, then I say, okay, the offer, I just want to clarify, is there any form of compensation? And I would say and it feels awkward. Like I wouldn't say, here's my application, it's a wonderful topic, and oh, by the way, do you pay me? Because then, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. But if they've come forward saying we're interested, then it's perfectly, perfectly understandable and perfectly acceptable to say, thank you very much. I'm really pleased with this. I just want to clarify, is there any form of compensation for the speakers? Historical Novel Society, they didn't pay you, but they knocked money off the conference fees. So, there was compensation. But I would say breach that subject when, when they're interested, when they approach you type thing. And then you decide, okay, do I want to invest the amount of money going to this when there's no compensation? And I would say, if you do, you're writing a memoir on nurses, and this is where, nurses who are gathering to talk about the difficulties and share their experiences. Okay, yeah, you know what? I have to pay for it myself, but this is the target. This is where it's going to hit. Oh, I'm going for a bunch of, if I'm going to a general medical hospital overseeing and there's going to be nurses attending, then you're like, what's the chances I'm going to hit the people I need to hit who are going to move me up the most? So once you find out, and then don't feel, bad about saying, I really truly appreciate this. I'm at the beginning of the speaking career. Budgeting is an issue right now. I'm not certain I can make it this year. Can I approach you again next year? Can I approach you for the next conference with this presentation? And I've done that. There was one and things came in with, with families and taking care of elderly patients and parents. And I said, I know it's a tentative offer, but this is what's going to happen. I can't guarantee with my father's health was going to, would it be all right? Or, what would you say about maybe postponing it to next year? And he came back and he said, yes, this is a topic I think our attendees will be interested in. Yes. When you're, more certain with things, contact me again. And I think everybody's afraid that the answer will come back, no, you will do it under my conditions. But, if you're straightforward with them, and if they value what you've offered them, they'll give you wiggle room. So, I would say, look at what gets you the best bang for your buck and be honest about it with the other end. Like, not saying it's not worth going there, but just saying I'm budgeting.
Well,
It's da, da,
and
da, da, da.
that brings us to the cash versus stuff equation. We do some things for cash. I want to be paid. I'm going to give more than I'm going to get, and I would like to be paid for it. And we do some stuff because we need a recording. We need a name on our resume. We need to meet one of the other speakers at the conference and be able to be in the speaker's green room to do that. And so we have to weigh, when do we need more cash? When do we need more stuff? For me, I will still do quite a few events for free if it's an audience I have not yet reached and that I cannot get to on my own. You know, hey, the nurses conference wants me to come talking about writing memoirs for nurses. Fantastic. I do not have an entree into that community myself. But you can also look for ways to make it more valuable for yourself. So for example, when everybody's coming into the room, my first slide is already up there and I've got a QR code on that slide. Hey guys, sign up, give me your email. You're going to get the slides and the bonus workbook for free after this conference. Even when the conference says, okay, we want to put everybody's slides on the conference site, I'm like, that's real nice, but I'm going to be sending them out to people's individual emails because I want to be able to get those emails to communicate with those people in the future. And getting people's emails is incredibly valuable. And so if you can think of, hey, I'm going to give away my slides, or hey, I have a bonus PDF that's going to teach you a special way to do one of these topics, you can get 50 or 100 or 150 emails in a day, which is huge in terms of elevating your mailing list.
Mhm. Yeah.
And when you're saying like with the QR code, when I went to the conference, I put my business card, I put the QR code on the business card. So, you know, if you run out of books, because you want to hit them, like if you have books when they're there. And even when I was just talking to people and it's, oh, that's an interesting subject. It's like, yeah, hey, you know, there's the QR code on the back of it. If you want to learn more, go for it. But yeah, you know, and we always talk with newsletters, like, you know, what brings people in to sign up for your newsletter? Yeah, take the speaking opportunity to get people engaged because they're already interested in you. You've got an audience that already wants to hear what you want to say.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I like what Elizabeth posted in the chat. A freelance writer once shared his guidelines for taking gigs: prestige, payout, or passion. To accept a gig, there had to be at least 2 of the 3 Ps. Yeah,
I
event.
love that.
It's great.
And
I
I
love
will
that.
say, like for the talk next week, I'm not getting paid for it. And it's going to be up on YouTube for free. But wow, the exposure and the number of people it's going to get me in front. I would, you know, yeah, that would be the type of thing. Like I would, if I had to travel, I would travel for that because it's just, wow.
Yeah.
Like you can't buy that.
And
Right.
that ties into Joy's question in the chat as well. Joy asks, have I found that being an expat, because I live overseas, is a hindrance to getting scheduled, and how can you overcome that? Well, you overcome that by having enough privilege to show up for free, or by, as Deborah was asking, doing a lot of stuff that is virtual, doing a lot of stuff that is online. We are all so lucky that there are more virtual opportunities than ever before, where it is low risk for you in terms of the investment of time and money and leaving your house. It's also low risk for the presenters because they don't have to fly you and feed you and house you. And so getting started with virtual events can be an amazing way to get your name out there, to get some clips, to get some great quotes. And the fantastic question to get quotable quotes is, what would you tell another writer considering attending this event? And that's how you get the useful promo quote and not just, I had a good time, I liked it. Sharla, what other questions do we have?
Ruth asked a question about promoting a book that's out of print. Is it worth promoting if it's only used from thrift books, etc.?
I think it's one again, it's like when you've got a chunk of time to advertise. So you've got to advertise something they can buy and something that they can buy. And again, get them. And this is like Allison saying the QR code, and why I had it on my card is because when they're there and they're interested, they'll click through and they'll make the purchase. But if you say, oh, we'll go away, you know, the longer they are from that moment, they're not going to buy. So if they can't get hold of it fairly quick, like, you know, immediately, I would say it's, you know, maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but you want them to have something they can buy while they're thinking of it. And if something's out of, you know, if they can't get hold of it, or if they have to go searching, people aren't going to go searching. So, you know, if it's something that, like, again, like it's just on this one site, throw it on the QR. Yeah. And I would also think that, is this, if them, because when, especially with like with nonfiction, you know, you're going to have more than one book, but you want to get them into your expertise. But with fiction, you want to get readers that continue. So if you're looking at this and saying, is this the book that's going to hook someone into it and think, man, I've just finished this book, I want the next one. So if it's not something that's going to drive them into the next, then you're kind of losing a little bit of the momentum. So think about, you know, not just purchasing that first book, but then purchasing the second. Yeah.
Do you even need to have a book published to be able to speak on a topic?
No. A lot of the things that I talked about when I first began, there was no even conception of a book being published. Like one of the ones with the editor's one, which I thought they're not going to ask me, was on how to do effective PowerPoints. I had no book. No, I had put in a little point thing, which again, because I thought, you know, if you want to get good reputation, have something to offer, even if the host is not expecting it. But no, I didn't have there was no book for it. There still isn't a book for it. So it's okay not to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you, Allison,
but if you have like a website, or if you have a newsletter, sell that, you know, even if it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just have them join up on, like Allison was talking about, on an email list, or join your Substack, or find ways just to be in each other's orbits. I think that's a lovely idea. Yeah.
We've got another question that's a really interesting, balanced question from Michael. He's been invited to a local book club to talk about his latest novel. He wants to give them what they want, which is the background of the story, but he thinks they also want to talk about them among themselves, about what the book meant to them. Kerry, how do you deliver something that is a combination of speech and participation?
I think it's a situation. I would do whatever you do, whatever presentation you're going to make, do that at the beginning. Because once people get in the habit of talking, then you're like, okay, everybody be quiet. I'm going to talk now. So talk about, you know, do something that, and have it that they feel like you're not cheating them. Because if you give like a 10-minute talk about the book and go, okay, everybody, let's now talk about how you feel about it, they're going to think, you didn't value my time enough to make a decent presentation. So I would say give more of a talk. And then, so maybe if it's like an hour, they said like an hour, you know, maybe do 40 minutes or so, 45, so they get like a feeling that they've gotten their money's worth. But check with and what I would do is, and especially when I was working with the Toronto Library, I said, okay, if we go 5, 10, 15 minutes over, is that going to be a problem for you? And they're like, oh, no, we'll let you know when it's an absolute problem. So when you go in, say, you know, look, I'm looking at doing this, talking maybe 40, 45 minutes, then I want to open it up discussion. If we go a little bit over, is that going to mess up your sales or mess up this? Is that going to, and lay it out to them, and they will say yes or no. But you've got to give them enough of a talk that they feel that you have respected them enough to, you know, to actually put something together. Because you don't want them. I had one fellow say, oh, this came up early. It was at a Sisters of Crime one in Toronto, where I live. And he was like, oh yeah, you know, this really came up, and I'm not really good at presenting. So I just threw something together. So I don't have a script, but, you know, I'll see what I can do. Oh. So you've got to give them that sense that you respect me enough that you have put in the effort to make it worth my while to put in the time to be here. So yeah, so talk.
Yeah, and I think it's great to prepare people to know that they're going to be welcome to participate, whether that would be like cards in the beginning, ask your questions before we get started, and then, you know, I'll be looking through the cards later, or give them something to read that you're going to be responding to, or anything like that as well, to prepare them for it.
Yeah. And when they're talking, you've got to control that conversation. So you've got to be the one that's saying, because what will happen is you will get that one person in the audience who thinks, oh, I've got to tell it. Well, I know that we only have 10 minutes to do this, and there are 8 other people, but I'm going to talk for 10. So you've got to be confident enough to say, yeah, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment. That's really great, but we've got other people. Let's hear some. So if you don't feel comfortable saying, yeah, well, yeah, that's great, then you can't open it up. But people will appreciate you, stepping in. So yeah, that's the other thing you have to be prepared to do.
Yeah, willing to rein in the cats.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So we are getting near the end of our time. Some of us will be hanging out a little bit longer if you want to stay and ask a couple more questions. And Diana, that's a fantastic question, and I'll answer it in just a moment. But we're also going to tell you 3 things that you can do today to step in or to step further into your public speaking career. Before we tell you that, we want to remind you to join us for the next episode, December 17th. Notice that we're in the middle of the month because of the Christian holidays that are coming up. Join us next episode. Dinty W. Moore will be joining us to talk about writing in a changing world, creating and publishing in uncertain times. We hope that we're going to get to see you at some Craft Talks webinars. Jessica Handler is going to be talking details. I'm going to be talking first pages. And I've got Project Memoir and the Memoir Intensive coming up starting in January. We're also going to drop Kerry's website into the chat, where you will be able to subscribe to Kerry's email list and see what she's writing about. Hey, Kerry, what is one thing that we can do to move forward with our speaking today?
I would say my advice would be start writing down the things you think you want to talk about. So write down what it is, and 4 points that, talking about doors, I'd talk about A, B, C, D, and just start throwing it around, because that's how you hone it. So I would say if you want to start the speaking career, go in, pick 5 topics. You don't have to stick with them, and then throw down just to get your brain going. Yeah.
I love that. Sharla, what's your top tip today?
I mean, I love that. It's a great idea. To start telling things that you might be an expert to talk about, or even interested in talking about. I would suggest, finding resources that you can use to refine your craft, because speaking is a craft. They might include Toastmasters International, or podcasts like The Public Speaker by Lisa B. Marshall. There's also a book, Talk Like TED Talk, by, I think the last name is Galo. And of course, practice and ask for feedback. Those are all great.
I absolutely love that. Love that. I'm going to say the number one thing you can do is find something that you really love to share information about, no matter how niche it is, no matter how dorky it is, no matter how much you think it's not something that anybody else is going to care about. There is almost certainly an audience who really wants to hear your unique take on the subject you care about the most. Start by thinking, what are the 3 key things that I would tell someone about my favorite significant topic that I would like to share, that I would like to get out there in the world? And if your topic is not super close to what you're writing about, see if you can find some kind of loose, weird little connection. I mean, heaven knows I have managed to connect fire eating to writing in many a webinar. You've been there, you've seen it. We want to say thank you so much, Kerry, for being here today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We are going to look you up on your website, which I have dropped into the chat, so that we can take a look at what you're doing, get on your Substack, find out more about your work. And thank you so much for being here today. Please feel free, everybody, to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
This is great.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Melody,
Sharla too.
Jan.
Thankful for all of you.
Thank you.
Great work.
Wonderful session.
Yay. Thank you all so much for being here. So if people are still hanging out, some of you may have additional questions. We did actually get a really nice question from Diane, or Diana. I'm just scrolling up to find it again, where she was asking, Diana was asking, what are your time-tested techie tools? Do you use Zoom? What do you use for slides? Kerry, you're still here. You want to answer that one?
For me, it's PowerPoint. Like, some people have tried to put me on to other things, but I think PowerPoint is the one. And if you have nothing other than just a PowerPoint, you're good. And Zoom, like some people, there are other ones which have gone through, but I think Zoom is the easiest. And I think it's also good because it's the one that people seem to be most familiar with. Like,
Right.
again, I'm not a techie person. And then we're like, we're going to go on to this site. And I'm like,
I believe that Teams was invented to torture people.
I know.
There is no quality experience of Teams. I mean, like I go on Zoom and I adjust my little appearance filter and I'm like, ooh, I didn't have to put foundation on today. Isn't this wonderful? And then I go into Teams and it's like, oh, who is that person? What are they doing there? It's
They
just,
have a filter, it's a troll filter.
the most valuable tools are the ones that work for you. I have a remote control that clicks my slides. You plug a USB into the side of your computer and you can use a remote control. That's really helpful for me when I'm teaching live because then I'm not stuck behind the podium. And I really like that.
Wow.
Also, all of your charger cables, those are some of your most valuable tools ever. All your charger cables, carry them all the time, everywhere. You're always going to need them.
That's a good batteries. Also, I would say if you're new to making slides, Jane Friedman has a great Sunday sermon on what makes a good slideshow. I would suggest that just check that out. It's a free resource and it really does kind of lay out what makes for a good slideshow because there are plenty bad slideshows and we've all seen them. I want to avoid those.
I have a
Yes.
question. I was
Yeah,
wondering.
Rebecca.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I've always wondered about backgrounds. I'm really turned off by the fuzzy background that people do because it's very distracting for me. But I always wonder, should I do the bookcases? Should I do a beautiful, I have a tapestry that like sometimes I do, or a plain background. What do you think is more appealing, or professional or good?
I'll jump in with this because I get this question a lot from presenters.
Yeah,
I would suggest as long as lighting is more important than background.
got it.
So like right now, you're in shade because you have
Yeah.
a window behind you, right?
Right.
So,
Now I know.
so you'd want the light to be on your face and not on the background, even though your background's really nice. So
Yeah.
of course you don't want anything lewd or embarrassing in the background, but I think when it comes to lighting, that's probably more of your concern.
Yeah.
And some people, I don't mind the fuzzy myself, as long as I can see their face.
Okay.
But I'm interested, what is Allison and Kerry, how do you feel about background?
Carrie?
yeah, I would agree with, like, the whole thing is that, is with the lighting and is that you come through professional, like if you're doing it in your kitchen, not so much. And I think the issue is that if you're looking for the one perfect background, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get one where people will be saying, oh, I'd rather have a garden scene, or, oh, I wish the curtains were this, or, oh, I wish this was different. You're never going to please everybody. So I think get one which is professional, get your lighting going, and choose what you like. And again, check everything, because they are going to look at everything. You're going to get somebody who's going to look at something and say, "Ooh, I was looking at their bookcase and they've got, X-rated books." Just check it, but you're not going to please everybody. So please yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been very lucky that I have a green painted accent wall in my house that is exactly the color of a green screen. That was not intentional. I used to work with a ring light, but it reflects in my glasses and it makes my eyes feel dry. So
Yes.
I have 2 giant standing lamps with paper shades from IKEA that sit on either side of me. I have a little tiny camera that's about this high called an Insta360 that was like crazy expensive. But my husband was like, you do enough webinars and it's tax deductible, you should buy it. And it's great because it's so small. It goes with me when I travel, so I can do a webinar from anywhere. And I have a Shure microphone and it's on a little arm that lets me swing it back and forth so that it's really easy to not have to prop it up in front of me. But when I'm teaching from a hotel room on the road, I balance my microphone in a toilet roll. Like you take the roll of toilet paper, you put it on the desk, and it acts as both a vibration absorber and it puts your microphone at the right height when you stick this part of the mic down into the toilet roll. I've taught
find that?
many a webinar for that.
How did you figure that out, Allison?
I was desperate. I think I was in The Hague and I was desperate and I pulled out like they didn't have a desk. I was for the first time in my life, I was in a hotel room that didn't have a desk. And I'm like, okay, well, even a feminist should know how to use an ironing board. And I pulled out the ironing board and set up everything on the ironing board.
Yeah,
That's funny.
life will teach you. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's a good, I've always wondered about the glasses thing because, I've done that and I make videos on Instagram, and I know that like I try to minimize the glasses glare, but that's good on both sides instead of at the top, because those ring lights really do a number on the glasses.
Yeah.
And turning up your computer screen. So notice I've just made my computer screen darker and it makes my face darker. Here, I turn my brightness up on my computer screen and it gives me more light in my face. And that's also helpful too.
Yeah. And you have a really good background because with your hair and the green and the
Allison, I do wonder, have you ever used the green background to put like the weather channel behind you or anything?
Does actually work as a green screen, but then my hair disappears into it and it feels weird.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Yeah,
coloring.
but it does actually work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it works really well. Yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca. That's an awesome question. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up here? There, now I've got my virtual back.
You're right. It does a weird helmet thing. It's not nice. Yeah. It hasn't gotten as good as it needs to be yet.
Right. Yeah, that's what
We'll be there soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions?
I do.
Yeah,
I'm
Dorothy,
interested-
what's your question?
I'm interested in the petite memoir, and I didn't get many details about it. Am I not clicking on correctly?
So I will drop the link in the chat again, and I'll send you the link that goes directly to the project memoir petite, because there's a memoir and there's a petite. One of them is more expensive and more commitment than the other one. The other one is a little bit easier and gentler, and I will drop that one in there. And then feel free, Dorothy, to email me directly, and I am so happy to answer any questions that I can answer for you. Basically, they're both an 8-week course. Petite has 3 live meetings and feedback and exercises, and the main project memoir has 8 live meetings. And they both have a ton of video craft lessons as well that you do at your own pace. And then there's editorial feedback as well.
Thank you.
There, Dorothy, I dropped it in the chat. So check that out and then come back to me with more questions, because I would love to talk to you about that. Yeah. Carrie, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great, and I hope there's things of use that are out there, and even just if it's things just to get you thinking, then it's yeah.
Absolutely. Tell your dad it's cool to turn the TV back on.
Yeah.
Back up to 84. Yeah.
Thank you for making this happen, Kerry, in less than ideal situation. It was great. It was so informative. Really appreciate it.
It's great.
Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.